The recording going. Right, welcome everybody. Wednesday morning, UK Chats. This morning we are talking about going into a situation with an outcome in mind. That topic was, I think, sparked by one of our participants last week who at one point in his life was a bouncer in a nightclub. And he was talking about when you have to go in to manage these particular situations, you always go into them with a specific outcome in mind, but you perhaps have to have some alternatives depending on how the situation develops. So it was an interesting way to kick the conversation off, or end the conversation off from last week, and to kick the conversation off for this week. So that's the topic. So we came into this situation with the only outcome in mind is a great conversation, some interesting discussions and some thoughts, and hopefully challenge everybody to think a little bit differently about perhaps the way they go into situations. So Ed, I'm going to bounce this one across to you, talking about bounces, and I know it was partially your question to I'm trying to remember what the chap's name was. You probably remember last week.
Was it Leroy?
Leroy, that's Leroy, yeah.
Yeah. It's fascinating because I used to work with a guy who was a doorman, and he was the same height as me, so he was 6 foot, and he weighed 21 stone. I'm not sure what that is in kilograms, but that is big. And he had almost zero body fat because he was a bodybuilder. He was a rock of a guy, and you could just tell you didn't mess with this guy. But still, people would have a go at him on the doors. And you think, why? Why would you ever have a go at this guy? Because you could see he knew what he was doing. And he used to go with an outcome in mind. And his outcome was to always try and talk his way out of the situation. That's what he's trained to do, diffuse the situation, whatever it was, to try and diffuse the situation. But he knew that wasn't always going to work. And if things did kick off, his outcome was to neutralize them as fast as possible. And he once got interviewed by the police because he'd been accused of having excessive force. And the police said, okay, he said, you've told us what happened. Can we interview the rest of the staff that were involved? And he said there weren't any. And there were 6 guys set on him. So he just floored them as fast as he could. And he picked the biggest guy first. And when they viewed the CCTV, they got away with it. So yeah, I think it's important to have that outcome in mind, and also, be flexible about how it's going to go. And he always wanted not to have conflict, which is interesting. And I think unless you have a specific outcome in mind, how do you know where you're going? If you just faff about, how do you ever achieve anything unless you know what you're going to achieve? Unless you think, oh, I need that. But then again, that's where you need to be flexible. Because I remember someone telling me once, he was an NLP practitioner, I can never say the word, neuro-linguistic programming, telling me that the person that's the most flexible wins the argument. And I think very often people go in with a fixed mind and nothing happens because they're just banging heads against each other. So I think flexibility is important. And then, although I set goals, and you know that I'm a big one for big goals, big, hairy, audacious goals, setting them, achieving them, working out the steps on the way, I also think sometimes it's not actually the person that runs the fastest, Trevor, as you said in the chat, because very often they blow up before they get there. It's the one that gets the pace right. I think sometimes you need not to have goals. And we've talked in the past in the South African chats about throwing hand grenades into meetings, not real ones, but metaphorical ones, because then things come out that you didn't know existed. And then you can use those, and that then becomes your outcome. And I've done it myself with running events. I do crazy events every couple of years to raise money for charity. One year, and I've mentioned this before in other places, I ran around a local reservoir, which was 5K, and I ran around it 100 times in a week. So that was so 500k in a week. Well, that's 310 miles. And I had no plan except I just put my tent beside the route, put some food in there, put some water in there, ran around the thing, did the number of laps I needed to do each day, and that was it. And then people saw what I was doing, and they came along and said, "Oh, what are you doing?" And a guy was walking with his children, and the boy said, "Hey, what are you doing, mate?" So I told him. He came back the following day, and he rode round on his bicycle with me. And then the following day, he came back and ran it, and his sister rode the bicycle. And then loads of people came along, and they brought cake, which is always appreciated. Someone phoned the local radio station up and said, "There's this guy doing this crazy thing." So I did an interview, raised loads of money for the charity, but I had no outcome in mind other than just the event. And it was beautiful the way it evolved, and it became a living thing. So I think sometimes, yes, I mean, I had that goal of running, for some stupid reason, 100 park runs between the one Saturday and the next Saturday, but everything else that came around it, I allowed to develop. And I think sometimes you need to just have that space for stuff to grow. So that's my thoughts and a bit of a ramble. And thanks, Kevin, for the recommendation about beer and books.
All right. So, yeah, as it said, a bit of a ramble round and round and round. And, yeah, I mean, that sounds to me like the first sign of madness. Keep on doing the same thing with no outcome in mind, or expecting the outcome not to change. So anyway, so Kate, you've got an inkling of the kind of things we're chatting about here this morning, and often so we'd like to hear your thoughts on going into situations with outcomes in mind. What does it spark for you?
I would politely wait to the very end, as I was new to all this. Okay. Yeah, it's
really...
Kate,
yeah, sorry. One thing you'll realize about Wisdom's Chats is we don't do anything conventionally. We try and surprise people. We put them on the spot, and we like to make them think. So
I like it. However, I'd also been making notes, and interestingly, I'd woken up with something from yesterday going through my mind, and it's all about flexibility. I thought, oh my goodness, this is perfect for this. And we're talking here in metaphors, aren't we? And just to pick up on what you already said about flex. So I am an NLP master practitioner. So absolutely, yes, flexibility is key. And in my job, I have to be very flexible. And recently, for example, I was working with someone who is themselves very inflexible. And no matter what I came to the table with, I'll give it to you this story. Just imagine that this person needed to cross a very, very muddy field. And there was no other way off the farm apart from one muddy field. Had to be done. So I offered a big hunter welly, expensive welly, a tall, long welly, a short welly, a unicorn welly, a rainbow cut, doesn't matter, every single, and everybody else would choose at least one or three of those wellies, and they would get across. But this one person, whatever was presented to them wasn't okay. They even pushed aside the one that they hadn't even yet seen and said that was no good as well. So through all of that flexibility, eventually, with a lot of thought and thinking, what else can I do without having, the plan was to get across the field. How we were going to get across the field, I don't know. But by coming at this angle and finally, it just dropped. Being more in tune, even more in sync with that person. Eventually, a little chink went down, a little chink in the armor went down. On one of those belly boots, they actually tried them on. And then they started to make some movement. And the movement was very, very painful. And yet there was movement. The one thing they didn't believe could happen was any movement in the body through the mind. Through the mind work, there was change in the body right there in front of them, showing that there is always at least one set of welly boots that will get you across that field. And there may be many more fields to go, but you're off to the first one. And once you're out of that first field, the options then start to grow. So you mentioned space as well there, didn't you, Edward? And again, having that space to grow. So I go into my work with, I wonder what's going to happen today. Not, this is the plan, this is the set program, and that was the world I had come from. As a nurse, it's taken me 7 years to let that go. If you come to me as a nurse and say, Kate, I need this injection, I will tell you exactly where it has to be put, exactly in what way, at what time, what schedule, and leaving all that behind to become completely fluid. And with being fluid, of course, yes, it brings us a lot more options. So yesterday it was a test for me, because I would see it as having like a virtual shelf around me that I will only pick off what I need. So you speak to me, I'm talking to me. Like this morning, I was listening, thinking, oh, where's this doing? Oh, it's that story you were just thinking about. This fits perfectly. If it hadn't have been, I'd have gone and picked something else off the shelf. But I love it. That flexibility is key. That's what I'm going to think about and take away from what was being said this morning.
Right, super. Thanks, Kate. Yeah, it is interesting how people can get locked in a paradigm, isn't it? And sometimes it takes just that, as you said, that little chink in the armor to release them from it. But finding that chink is not always the easiest thing, is it?
That's the other thing. Perseverance pays off. That's another of my favourite lines. Perseveration pays off.
Great. Some perseverance. There's somebody coming in, joining us. Okay, let me let them in. Frank, your thoughts on the topic?
Well, I've got quite a lot of thoughts on the topic, but I'm going to spin it round just a little bit and say I love having days without any thought of any outcome, and it's surprising what can happen in days like that. So I do this. I actually do this myself, and waking up maybe once every 2 months, something like that, on a Saturday or a Sunday when it's not supposed to be a work day, but it usually is a work day. And I waking up in the morning and say to myself, I don't expect anything from today. I don't expect any outcome. Whatever happens is meant to happen. Now, I don't really believe in a lot of kind of, leave it to the world and it will all work out. But I love having those days where I just don't have any outcomes. So in other words, if I'm getting up, having breakfast, and I think, I'll just go out for a walk. Something's going to happen that will inspire me. But I'll still try not to have an outcome. So I might meet one of my friends and they'll say, let's do X, Y, and Z. Let's go to the park or let's go to the cinema or whatever. And I'll let that flow just go and decide what I want to do without thinking. So what if I go to the cinema and then what have I got to do? How do I get there? I don't do any of that. I literally just have a day of no outcomes. Having said that, I think that life is my outcome. I work with a lot of people. I have worked in the past with a lot of people who their goal is to retire or have a child. Once I do X, Y, or Z, then I'll be able to do the rest of it. I think that life is a journey. Life is the outcome, and I want the outcome for my life for people to say, well, something, he's not going to be remembered 50 years after his death, but for the people who knew him, they're going to say that I was a loyal, good, all right person. I didn't do anything too bad. So I think my outcome for myself, long term, is life is just to make sure that I can do my best, and having these little blips every day, every so often, which says I don't need an outcome for today. I just need to let today happen and see what happens. So that's my thoughts on outcome.
Great, thanks, Frank. Yeah, sometimes it is just to have a laid-back day, isn't it? Just not to have to worry about specific things. So, Kevin, welcome. I think your first time with us, if I'm not mistaken. Heard a bit about the topic and the conversation, so I'd love to hear your thoughts.
I think, sometimes I go into situations where I have an outcome in mind, but I think it's as much about being adaptable by listening to what the other people have to say. I've got 2 ears and 1 mouth, and I should use them in those sorts of proportions. It's like I said, it's about being adaptable. I don't have any other specific kind of thoughts in mind. I mean, sometimes if you go into, there are situations where I do go into situations with a desired outcome in mind, especially when I'm in as part of a crowd at a football match and I'm supporting my team. But then again, most football fans.
Yeah, not much you can do to influence that outcome, is there?
If you knew which team he supported, you'd know how bad the outcomes can be.
Yeah, I support my team through thin and thinner.
All right. Okay, thanks, Kevin. Yeah, well, good luck with that one. So, all right, Trevor, outcomes.
So can you plan for serendipity? Second time I've used that word this morning. You know what, even though we might think that we wake up in the morning with no plans at all, I think that is a plan. So, you know, we probably all have some sort of short, medium, or long-term vision for the day, for the month, for the year, as to what we want to achieve. But I like the direction that Frank was going. I also think Ed is silly to run around the reservoir. I told him South Africans, they get a fishing ski and they put a rod on the back of it and they paddle and they catch fish at the same time. So an outcome is predicted. Productivity is the name of the game. They bait a hook and they look to catch the fish, but they do that in the surf, Ed. Where Frank was going is that life is a journey. And I think as you get older, you recognize, although you've planned certain outcomes, there are 1,000 different things that actually get in the way. And while you're trying to get to that outcome, you're distracted by all sorts of things that distract you. So just to enjoy the journey is absolutely fantastic. Frank, I think I have more days than one every 2 or 3 months. Either you're a liar or you're not old enough yet, because some of us are distracted on a daily basis now at our age. I'm busy distracted here with builders in the back of our operation. And boy, are they distracting me left, right, and center. And now I've just had a call from my daughter. Her car won't start. She can't get to work. I've got to shut this down, go to her, pick up her car, and see if I can get her a battery. I mean, who planned for that as a day? So you've just got to enjoy it, enjoy life. I like that type of direction. Life is a journey. Oh, and I must also. Ivan will probably have pleasure in telling the story. He knows that I've got no patience at all. If we're going to do something, let's get it blooming well done. Do it now. Many years ago, I actually prayed for patience, and I got her. She was my granddaughter. She was gifted to me from a direction that most perhaps don't want the surprise. And I became a full-time grandpa, as did Granny, but she has less patience than I do. So she's been with us for 12 years. And that was God's idea of giving me some patience, was to gift me with a little surprise granddaughter, and we became full-time grandparents over that one. So who plans for these outcomes? No, life is a journey, Frank. I'm 100% with you, but don't go running around a reservoir 150 times because you want to equal some park runners' distance record. That's just stupidity. Serendipity.
Trevor learned a new word today. He's used it 3 times. Yeah, and that's where it stops, because he can't get past 3. So 1, 2, 3, he goes, yeah. So the next time he tries to say it, he's going to get his tongue tied, like Ed does with neuro-linguistic programming. So we have these challenges as we get a little bit older. My tongue's getting tied now. You can hear it. It's not working too well. So on that note, I'm going to hand it over to Lee to see if she's got an outcome in mind.
Well, for Frank and Kate and Kevin's sake, I'm going to repeat what I've often said on this platform. Edward and Trevor and Ivan know me well. I am a planner. It's my absolute go-to. It's my security blanket. And so at the beginning of the year, somebody posed the question, what if you've been asked to relinquish? And COVID times has forced me to relinquish planning, because what can you plan? So it's been a good, and my husband's also a planner, so we plan everything. And it's worked for us in many, many ways, because we've done things and gone places and achieved things that we wouldn't otherwise have done if we hadn't just put a peg in the ground or a mark on a map and said, we're going there and we're going to make it happen. But at the same time, you can be so, exactly what everybody said, you're so caught up in the plan that you lose the wood for the trees. And so definitely, so one of the things my husband and I have in our lives is what we call planned spontaneity. It works for us that we think about having your non-outcome days, Frank. So having a non-outcome day, we put it in the diary. But as before we sort of started down this topic, I was thinking about my daughter who loved horses. And from the time she was 4 until she was about 11 or 12, she rode horses. I knew nothing about horses, nothing about horse riding. I learned everything from her experiences. And her coach would tell her, the horse is going to go where you want it to go. So if your intention, your desire to go in this direction or to get over this jump is where the horse will go. And I often come back to that. Kate, you spoke about metaphors, and I often think about that in terms of our thoughts, our intentions, is that, you know, we can bemoan the fact, oh, this didn't work, but where was our thinking? How were we directed in that space? So I do think an outcome, I do think our intention and our focus in a particular direction does result in the place that we find ourselves. So I think it is really important to know what your intentions are and to follow through with them. And then the last thing I wanted to say is in a completely different direction. A friend of mine lost her job as the CEO of a very well-known corporate here in South Africa. She'd literally broken the glass ceiling, had found this incredible position, was doing very well. The figures of the company were doing well, but she was asked to resign. And the reason for it was entirely political. She didn't fall in line with the powers that be. She didn't, kowtow to the various political movements within the company. And her lesson from that was she was naive. That she thought if she delivered the results, that was good enough. And what she didn't realize is she would step into a meeting and the decision had already been made behind closed doors. And so this whole idea of deciding an outcome before the event, that when you're working with people, you have to be able to work in various ways, not to be, I don't mean to be a political animal, but I think you have to be wise. If you in a team, you need to know how different people work and to work with their strengths and weaknesses and to sense how things are going. And be able to, especially if you're wanting an outcome, if you're wanting to go in a direction, and if you're wanting to lead, and you've got a vision that you want to move towards, there has to be some outcome that you're working with these various dynamics in order to make it happen. So I just throw that into the pot as a completely different perspective. But thank you. It's been a great discussion.
Thanks. Yeah, I think it is interesting because personally, I think you're all wrong. Yeah, so people are fundamentally goal-driven machines. We do everything with an outcome in mind, whether it's intentional or unintentional, whether it's conscious or subconscious. And if you're not moving towards outcomes of your own, you're moving towards somebody else's because you're being directed from an external perspective. So I don't think we can do anything without an outcome. And maybe it's not in mind, and then maybe that's where the caveat is, because it's not conscious. It's not something that is currently in your mind, but an outcome is an outcome. There's nothing that we can do that doesn't have an outcome. And whether that outcome is simply having an easy day, it doesn't matter. That's an outcome, isn't it? So I think everything we do has an outcome, has a result. The only question is whether it's intentional or not, for me. So that's the way I would encapsulate it.
Can I ask a question, Ivan? Then, and
of course.
Would it be good to just go round everybody, just one sentence? That's all. Try and limit to one sentence. What they wanted the outcome to be of this call, because I don't think I had an outcome, but maybe listening to you, Ivan, maybe I did have an outcome to learn more or whatever subconsciously, but I don't think I came into this call with any outcome in mind. One sentence, then just comment to that.
Okay, was that your sentence? Do you want to?
That was 10, sorry, that was 10 sentences. I totally understand. One sentence.
All right, great. So let's start with Kate. So your thoughts on that comment?
I'll put that one up again. That's what my outcome was. What is this all about? I want to go away from here, having had an experience that I can go, oh, what was this? What was that? And what did I take from it? And what can I use? I will always take something and use it somewhere else. It might be today, it might be tomorrow, don't know, it might be personally, it might be with a client, but I'll always take something and it will come into play. So that taking something with me from this is my outcome. And because it is in my control to do that, I can choose to take something from it or choose not to. So it's a well-formed outcome because I have that choice.
Right, thanks, Kate. So I trust you achieved your outcome. So, all right, Kevin, your thoughts on that? Why did you join us? What was your outcome?
A bit similar to Kate, to find out what the heck these things are all about.
Okay, all right. Well, hopefully you've achieved that. Ed?
Yeah, like almost everyone I come on, it's to get new ideas and see things from a different perspective. And a secondary aim is to try and push Trevor's buttons.
All right, and on that note, let's push Trevor's button and see if he can get the right one to unmute himself. And there he goes. Welcome.
Succeeded, Ed. Right, to answer Frank's question, I thought of a little phrase, mental cappuccino. So when you go for a cappuccino, do you look to the bottom of the cup before you start sipping on it, or you just enjoy it over a couple of minutes? So I think that's what this is about. But I'd also like to add two other things. So don't give me a break to share one sentence, Frank. One of them really is, and I've forgotten what the first one is, so I'll go to the second one. As an old sportsman, I was very much a goal-oriented individual. In other words, playing with any ball of any kind, I could put that ball in the corner of the net. Then I was a water polo player, and I could put that ball in the corner of the net from anywhere in the pool, whether I was looking at the corner or not. And that was because I always had a mental image of where that corner was. And that sort of happened in kicking the ball over the rugby post. Whether I was throwing a cricket ball, I was absolutely accurate in what I was able to do as a youngster. And that was because I think subconsciously my eye was drawn to the corner or whatever I was going to hit, and whether I was looking or not, I knew where that particular target was. And I agree with Ivan that I think we all unconsciously have an outcome in mind. It is just whether we are happy with the journey or unhappy with the outcome, as to how we're affected. And I can't remember what the first one, it was so deep and so profound that old age has gotten,
Trevor's just proved Trevor's law, that he can talk about anything he wants to talk about, not the subject.
Not on your UK, not on your UK. What is this? Wisdom's UK. Oh, in fact, you've just reminded me what it is. In actual fact, the outcome that I had in mind for actually joining you on your UK chat here, Ed, was that this is a drop in the ocean of the global initiative that we're actually looking to actually foster. And that's 1 million people just like us who are thinking about positive things that can make a difference in this world. And whether we can pick up ideas from forums like this to actually bring more and more people like us together, excluding Ed, of course.
All right. So thanks, Trevor and Ed. And Ed, you just destroyed my next comment, because I was going to say Trevor had actually dropped the ball on his first comment, but then he picked it up again. So Lee, you're I mean, nobody's stuck to the rules as they don't in this forum. So yeah, Ed, I mean, Frank's one sentence has become another whole 10 minutes discussion, but that's great.
Oh, thanks, Frank. Great question. So every Wisdom's Chats for me is part of the bigger outcome of Wisdoms. And for me, it's about the incredible, how fascinating people are. Kate used the word curiosity. And it is really a celebration of the remarkable people that each person has a unique perspective, a unique story, and a viewpoint. And if we can create a platform where people have that opportunity to share that in a way that everybody's point of view is respected, everybody's perspective is allowed and is given, so you're creating this multifaceted picture across continents, across people, across these all kinds of thinking, that we are expanding our understanding of who we are, how we can be in the world, what the opportunities are. So if you want a big picture of what a small platform like this is for me, that's what it is. It's really world changing. That's my outcome.
No small goals for Lee, and all of it's very carefully planned. So expect it to happen, folks. Expect it to happen. It always happens when the best laid plans. So that's, I think, for me, my sentence is one word: think. That's what it's about. Get us to think. So that brings us pretty much to the end of today's session. Thanks everybody for participating. Lee, topic for next week, Wednesday. You got one, and have you planned it? Have you got a careful outcome in mind?
Well, yes, and this is the planning and the flexibility. So Edward reminded me, and I was talking about this in terms of our celebration of unique people and stories and so on. And one of the things that we do on Wisdom's Chats is that we invite people just to share something of their life story in whichever way they would like. Some people have shared it using photographs, metaphors, or they've just picked little bits and pieces that's tracked the story of their lives. And it's just an opportunity for us to celebrate and to appreciate and to identify with people in their life journey. So Frank, you use the word journey, and I'm actually going to pounce on you and wondering whether you would be open to sharing something of your story with us, however you would like. Would you be open to that?
I'd be very open to that. You'll be very surprised at my story, but yeah, I'd be open to that. Do you mean next week, or do you mean
next
now?
Week?
Next week.
Next week.
Yeah.
No, we'll give you a whole week to think about it.
Yeah, I can tell you all about it now, but yeah, that's good. That's good. Yeah.
Would love that. Would love that. So Kate and Kevin, it'd be great to have you next week, and then we hear all about Frank.
Excellent. All right, folks, have a great week further, and we look forward to the story of Frank, and hopefully it's a Frank story, but we'll find out next week. So have a good one. And yeah, by the way, if you want to join us, 3 p.m. UK time, we're back on in the US today. Otherwise, every weekday, 7 a.m. UK time, we here as well. And as you know, Wednesdays, 8 a.m. UK time as well. So 3 on Wednesdays and 1 every other day. But other than that, have a great week further.
Are you sure it's 3 o'clock? I got it down as 2 o'clock. 3.
It's 3 o'clock our time. Ed, you're quite correct. 3 o'clock our time, 2 o'clock your time.
Yeah, okay.
Love all these different time zones. It just makes life very interesting. Okay, have a good one.
Bye.
Bye.